Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Art Business Podcast. My name's David Bellingham. I am Programme Director of the Master's Degree in Art Business at Sotheby's Institute of Art in London. And my guest today is an alumnus of the programme from 2018 to 19, Louis Buysse. Welcome, Louis.
Welcome. Hello, David Bellingham. Thank you for having me. So I suggest you should start with introducing your first question. So maybe I can introduce myself first.
Yes. Sorry, I meant to give a kind of slightly broader
Pleasure.
introduction, which is that you have become, since graduating, but I think you probably already were a specialist, certainly a specialist, but now we might
Sure.
describe you as a specialist and advisor in modern and contemporary art, and particularly in connections with the market, and generally residing in Belgium. So welcome again.
Correct. Maybe I just introduce shortly in a nutshell my background.
Of
So
course.
first of all, I'm by theory an artist too. So I studied in the Royal Academy in Ghent in Belgium, and before that I did architecture. And these two formations started me to question the role of being in the arts and doing business, because I was selling art already from young age. So after that, I decided to do an international business degree, an extra degree. And a part of it I did in Taiwan. And then I want to make formalize or uniform the two studies, well, the two directions I was taking, the art and the business. And then I came to the Master Art Business at the Sotheby's Institute of Art in London, which was David Bellingham, my tutor, by the way, for my dissertation cross collecting. So why I choose the topic cross collecting? At that time, it was very blooming up. Like everyone was starting to talk about it, but there was like a not very clarity about what the term cross collecting actually was meaning. Like people were giving many definitions to it, and that was giving me the reason why I did the dissertation towards it, which was as well aligning with my the multidisciplinary approach in the art, which means during my education, I was always practical involved, like doing internships or working in weekends, whatever, with art dealers, galleries, and etc. And the most interesting tutor or mentor for me was Paul de Grand. He's a very famous antique dealer who was already dealing art since he's 17 years old. And now he's doing it for 55 years old. He's very well known in the UK. All the ancient old antique dealers know him. And I really recommend a lot of people to work for this kind of people, because you learn really the purity of dealing in the art instead of working in a gallery, because things are, according to me, not that advanced, like the pure elegance of dealing art as an antique dealer. And I think these type of people are very rare, because since the dot-com boom, as Paul de Grand explaining it, it's became very hard to deal antiquities. It was much easier in the 70s, the 80s, and 90s to find special objects and bringing this to the market. So this is a bit in a nutshell my background of education. David, do you want me to continue how I stepped myself into the professional world after the master?
No, I think we'll come back to that perhaps, because I
Sure.
think I think listeners are all rearing to hear some other things about your if you like subjective tastes. So I just wanted something we might come back to in the conversation, because I had this discussion with some of my students the other day who are studying my elective on I actually now call it cross collecting, Western antiquities and the market for Western antiquities and old masters. But some of so in the UK, the words antiquity definitely usually refers to ancient Greece and Rome and other
Correct.
Mediterranean cultures, Egypt, Near East, and so on. But as I understand it, the word antiquité in French or you're from Belgium, it kind of I don't think it means that, does it? I think it means what? So in the UK, antiques would be an antique store would not be anything ancient. It would be old furniture, old
Exactly.
ceramics and so on.
Yeah, exactly. But as you are mentioning it from an academic point of view, antiquities are framing the periods you are mentioning.
Hmm.
But in the more straightforward, elegant way, people say antique. I mean, people can already say antique to an old Macintosh computer nowadays.
Yes,
Uh,
exactly. It's
so
like a vintage thing.
exactly.
But the problem is it remains ambiguous because one of my favorite books, and the one that I mainly recommend for this elective, is Haskell's amazing book Taste and the Antique, which is actually about the development of a taste for antiquity from the Renaissance onwards, and the way they fell in love with certain excavated sculptures in particular. And the new edition of that, actually, by the way, is about to emerge, edited by another writer. So we're looking forward to that coming out later this year.
Well, that's correct. Actually, the foundations of cross collecting are going back when we have our dissertation together about cross collecting. You were referring to the excavations in Pompeii when this kind of philosopher, I forgot his name right now, was
Epicurus?
exactly, he was putting these marble sculptures and in relationship with this
Oh,
poetry.
no, I think so. Basically, what we've got, and this has been in the news, so a lot of listeners might be aware of this place, the Villa at the Papari in Herculaneum. So
Ah, yes, that's the new one.
it's a modern name because there's thousands of ancient papyri that were actually burnt, kind of charred, carbonized
Yeah.
in the eruption of Mount Vesuvius, the volcano. And that's been in the news. Have you heard this? It's been in the news recently
Yes.
because they were using AI. They were trying to get young AI experts to use AI and X-ray to see if they could decipher the text. Because if you start unrolling these texts, they actually break up. And so
Yeah.
they've now discovered ways of doing this. So probably a lot. This was in this guy's library. It wasn't Epicurus, but he was an Epicurean. So he had, there's portrait busts they found in the excavations now in Naples Archaeological Museum of philosophers, including Epicurus, if you like. But the guy who owned the villa is almost certainly this person, Calpurnius Piso. And there's a portrait of him as well in Naples Museum. And it's really wonderful because coming back to cross collecting, Louis, and you may remember this. His collection, which was pretty much found, Pompeii and Herculaneum, all of the works of art. If you excavate them carefully, you find in situ. And so it's an amazing example of a very large and amazingly expensive collection because there was bronze and marble. But
Yeah.
it's kind of cross collecting because it's kind of his collection of earlier archaic Greek,
Yes, he
archaic
was
classical
bringing
Hellenistic
everything
and
together
Roman.
in
Yeah,
an
so it's a
intellectual
kind of,
dialogue.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And as you know, the other I would also include cross collecting also means particularly in this, in the UK and in Europe and North America in the Grand Tour centuries, it also means a library. So I would include the collecting of literature and old rare books and
Even
manuscripts as
in
cross
music,
and
even
music. Exactly.
it's a very holistic approach, like how like an environment is defined by making references to what the person in C absorbs through history. And uh, to me, that's the ultimate definition of cross collecting. What is making the juxtaposition visually, aesthetically, but as well intellectual to your environment, what you are bringing together, and what's the essence about that? It's not merely like putting random things together. It needs to have a certain meaning. That's for me very
Definitely. Well,
important as a
this is this
concept.
whole theory of like academic, psychological, art historical theory of collecting. Why do people collect? And the collection, some people just collect things that they see and they buy and they put, but a collector, a good art collector, in my opinion, has to be rationalizing what they're collecting, has to have some kind of overall rationale. And so a cross collection can't stand the word eclectic, but it's, it's selecting things, as you say, that are kind of become also like a kaleidoscopic, multi-dimensional facets of your own personality and interests. I don't know whether you would agree with that.
I totally agree. I was just thinking about, it was crossing my mind about the exhibition from Axel Voort in Palazzo Fortuny, I think in 2008, 2009. I could be wrong, but the exhibition was called Proportio. And
Hmm.
in the exhibition Proportio, everything was relating to proportion, dimension. And this can go through mathematics, but as well to a proportion of the body, how this can be analyzed. And that was to me like a holistic exhibition of cross collecting. Um, as from an intellectual, but as well from an aesthetic point of view, because everything what was positioned in a proportion um, with a deeper meaning. So yeah, actually, to summarize, like the topic cross collecting still is part of my DNA as an entrepreneur because it is right now as well part of how I open my gallery, but as well how I was working in the auction house before, how I was looking to things. It's hard to put myself into a bracket. Yes, I am an expert in modern and contemporary art, but I was dealing a lot in silver art as well,
Hmm.
like in especially German silver. Anyway,
Mm.
part of that.
I mean, to me, that's quite esoteric. German silver. I can't really put my hand on my heart and say I know any much about it. I've got a Jugendstil goblet over there on the bookcase, but I know a little bit about Art Nouveau in different countries, but that's it.
Well, this is the advantage by working in the auction house.
Sure,
You get, and especially in let's say mid-range auction houses. I'm talking about Lempitz, Dorotheum,
sure,
Curial. We yeah, Dorotheum is a good example. Lempitz is a good example because they are still surviving on a heritage of specialities that they have still in-house. In
sure.
Lempitz, I had, for example, one of the best silver experts in the world, Karel Schoeneveld, and he exposed me really to the expertise of silver, English silver, French silver, whatever. But my preference went to German silver, and I still remember I found a little goblet as well in a small Belgium auction house from Silencia, this like old Prussia region from the silver mines,
Wow.
and and I sold it to a museum on the end. I made a lot of profit on it. I was very happy about it, but it was very an academic excavation as well into a subject I was not related to. And I really recommend to the listeners as well to be curious about not only contemporary art and modern art, because that's only a little section. You need to have foundations from the past to build up your presence.
Definitely. And you might, I believe that your year of the Masters, we went to the Venice Biennale, did we?
Yes, we did.
And I mean, I've just come back from a vacation, but obviously also mainly to see this year's Biennale. We're taking the students in June and again in November next year's group because of the Art Biennale. And you know what I'm going to say? Venice is an amazing place for people like you and me because you've got this cutting edge artistic ideas of the Biennale with a lot of philosophy behind the curation of it and so on. Um, but at the same time, we go into historical Venice and we can take people around churches and look at Bellini and Titian altarpieces. And not just that, the Carrère Museum is a wonderful, we're talking about collecting and cross collecting. The Carrère Museum on San Marco has a lot of very famous Venetian collectors, historical collectors, and their collections from antiquities through to terrestrial, celestial globes,
Yeah.
books, the woodcuts at the famous map of Venice. It's a great place to study collecting culture as well. And of course, these issues of war looted art. The Venetians have a lot of art that they arguably looted from particularly Constantinople. So we've got a historical city, which paradoxically is one of the cutting edge, biennials in terms of modern contemporary artistic ideas.
I totally agree with that. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's good to go. And let's face it, most cities. Actually, I'm going to ask you this now, do you have a favorite city?
Oh, that I wrote it in my notes as the most difficult question you can ask me.
It's
But
it's terrible because we have different moods for different places, obviously. But
exactly,
if someone put a gun against your head and said, "What's it going to be?"
during my youth, I used to, when I was student, I had a huge preference for Italian cities. I was traveling 3 years a year to Venice.
Hmm.
Um, like from the moment there was a long holiday, I booked a ticket and went to Venice to study the arts in Venice. Not for the Biennale in general. I was just going like an addict. Like
Hmm.
I wanted to see Venice and Milan as well. Very interesting places. But as I'm very cultural spoiled by growing up in Bruges, Bruges is a very interesting city too, although the tourism is very intense.
Mm.
Uh, and when you grow up in a city like Bruges, you have a high criteria of aesthetics. I mean, so wherever city you go in the world, you always think like, but yeah, man, my city is much more prettier. So yeah, only Venice is going above that. Like
And of course, Venice and Bruges, of course, have similarities in terms of the water.
exactly, it's called Venice of the North, and actually
Oh.
trade routes are very were very connected because in the past Bruges was the Silicon Valley of the Middle Age, and it was the connector actually between Great Britain at that time and the Silk Road between the UK, Bruges, Nuremberg to Venice. That was the route.
Yep.
And As well for pigments and as well for the Flemish primitives were the foundation of the Renaissance because a lot of knowledge has been transferred through that route to Italy. So Bruges is very important, but then the sea went away and Bruges came not that important anymore. So all these trade families like the De Medici, there is a De Medici house in Bruges, by the way,
Hmm.
a palace. They all moved to Antwerp and then to Amsterdam. So it's very Bruges is a very interesting city. Uh, Historically, as well, the glasses technique is founded here from Jan van Eyck was the first one who was practicing the glasses technique. To define shortly, the glasses technique is just by layering transparent layers beneath each other to create actually depth into your layers of
Oh, right.
paint.
You mean glazes?
Glazes,
Yes, yes. Yeah.
exactly. We
Well,
got
can you
glass.
explain what you mean by the Silicon Valley, that Bruges was the Silicon Valley of the Middle Ages?
Yes, so actually the Bourse, the stock market is foundedly here invented, I think in the 1300s.
Sure.
The trading was here, the guilds were here,
Hmm.
uh, very important banking, but as well clothes, wool. There is the Hallen House where the wool was traded in the past. And yeah, at that time it was Silicon Valley because it was so advanced.
I
Don't think about
understand.
iPhones, but just about um, centralization of multiculturality in that region. At
Mm.
that time, Paris was even not that important. Bruges was very important because
Do you find it sad that most people have forgotten that past and it doesn't come into their history books because the sea moved and then it kind of got left behind in some ways and is now only, when you say Bruges to a British person, they say, oh, really nice place to go and go on the kind of canals and the barges. Very pretty.
it is, but I was wondering if the sea was still here, closer to Bruges, what would Bruges will be like?
Hmm.
Would be totally differently.
Definitely.
But that nature chose to leave it
That
behind.
That's happened to a lot of places, hasn't it? I mean, Ostia, the main seaport of ancient Rome, if you go there now, it's inland, whereas it was right on the at the mouth of the River Tiber. Pompeii, of course, which didn't
Exactly.
got destroyed, but the sea is now, when you visit the ancient site, as you know, the sea is now um, 2 to 3 miles or kilometers away because of the lava flows just push the sea back. But you can you can stand in Pompeii. I'm sure you've done this, and you can still see the rings where the boats used to on the Mediterranean in the harbor that they used to come in, and that's why Pompeii is such a trading city. Such a
Yeah,
city
and
of
the question is, what if that
merchants.
didn't happen? How will Pompeii be today? That,
Absolutely. Yeah. If that
so,
exactly. Oh, well, that we're getting quite profound. So am I right in saying that Bruges would still be a favorite city if you had to choose?
I don't like to live here because it's just full of tourists and
Yeah,
people very narrow-minded. And
sure.
I like to be in a big city like London, for example. At my time, I really love to live in London, for example.
Sure.
The reason why is the vibes of multiculturality, the Commonwealth system, politically then. I really
Mm,
like this way of working.
mm,
People have a really high respect for heritage and traditions, which is a bit kind of lost in Western Europe, I must
mm.
admit. So since the Brexit, I don't want to go to very too political into this, but I think it's bad and good. Like, and things have bad and good things, but I think it's on one side good to protect a sort of sovereignty and identity that UK was making it very interesting, which I cannot find here in Belgium.
Mm.
So yeah, bottom line, I really love to live in London, just because of these kind of uh, points. Yeah, yeah,
It's such a shame, the Brexit, because and it's weird, isn't it? Because lockdown came soon hard upon Brexit. People have kind of forgotten what we were meant to be doing in Brexit, and so all that we see are negatives, I would say, in this country. When I arrive in Marco Polo Airport in Venice and I can't go in the EU line, which saddens me because I see my
exactly.
brothers and sisters in that line. As I'm not saying that I don't in the others, but my son was actually crying the day of the referendum because he said, "Me and my friends see ourselves as we've grown up as Europeans." And then
Mhm.
most recently, we've got this ridiculous political decision in the UK not to join the uh, what's it called, the educational um,
Yeah, yeah,
change.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
That's
you
one
know,
of the
y-
disadvantages.
yeah, and the Europe was reaching out to us and with an olive branch for saying we can still have student exchanges, and not only Rishi Sunak, the head of the party in power, the Conservative Party, has said no, but also the shadow prime minister, the head of the Labour Party, has said the same, and without any rationale. It's really awful that we've lost this intellectual,
I
the
totally agree.
facilitating of intellectual exchange.
Because I left the UK for that reason. I was like, okay, I'm just going to be very proactive. If I want to stay in the UK for a job in the art market, the probability to find something interesting in this time wouldn't be interesting. So I decided to move back to Europe, which I started directly in Lampert. Well, directly, let's say, almost directly.
Exactly. So I know that I don't want to give too much of, away to the listeners, but we're going to talk about your new gallery later on. But I did
Sure.
realize that the gallery is in a place now you must pronounce this for me. It's in a place called Knokke
Knock a haste. Yeah.
Knokke. And
Yes.
I when I looked it up, because I've never been there, it looks wonderful. It's my kind of place. It's got wetlands, nature,
Yeah.
marshes, but it's on the sea. Could you?
Well, Knock is quite interesting. Sure, I'm happy to like go into that. Knock is called to the foreigners, they call it the Hamptons of Belgium. It's a bit a mix between Monaco and Saint-Tropez in one cocktail. Historically, Knock is actually built up by people from Brussels that go there for their holiday house and go to relax. And through history, this became a very mundane place. where all very wealthy and aristocrats are coming and so on, to spend the sea, nature, and so on. And the last 50 years, it became very intense because of the nouveau riche, of new rich people that's with a lot of capital started to buy more, and it happens everywhere actually. And now real estate prices are insane. There are equal prices for a house than in London, with
Wow.
10, 20, 30 million easily.
Yeah.
And
By the way, was that stimulated during lockdown? Because in the UK, a lot of wealthy people started realized that they didn't want to stay in London for lockdown, so they immediately bought up country cottages and seaside locations, particularly in Cornwall. And the local people were very against them. It was kind of there were a lot of social tensions. So was this also boosted by COVID? Did people move out there when the lockdowns occurred?
oh, since COVID, the prices went more crazy.
Exactly. So it's happening everywhere.
Yeah. It's the prices there are keep on rising
Sure.
instantly in that region.
But I what I wanted to ask you is that we spoke about the city, Bruges, and I just wondered whether this place is a favorite kind of non-urban location for you, or would you answer that in another way? And then we can come back to Knockahist later.
Well, uh,
Like
I'm
a non-urban location that you love.
oh, not really. I just go there because I love the sea, and to me, it's one of the only nicest places at the Belgium sea coast, and where I can see a lot of art. Knokke has the highest concentration of art galleries in the world on
It's
square meter.
amazing. It's amazing. I honestly, I feel so ignorant, Louis, that I
It's
don't
crazy,
know
yeah.
this place. And I thought there must be something in this place if Louis has set up a gallery there. And I did, yeah,
Yeah.
indeed, I did read about the art galleries there. And isn't there like public sculpture like a hare and, you know,
Yes, even Nikita Sanfal built a huge house there. Keith Haring used to come there to spend
mm,
time. There's lots of art has been made by Keith Haring there.
sure.
So it has a lot of connections with the art world through history. There
Hmm.
are as well very known dealers there, like Guy Peters, very well known in France as well. For he is, for example, responsible for Christo. He is the guy who put the wrap around Arc de Triomphe in Paris, or
Sure.
did that huge project in Italy. I
So would you
mean,
say it's not dissimilar maybe to St. Ives in Cornwall, which is this historical art colony where there are still important artist studios where Francis
Vibes is
Bacon, etc.,
still a
painted?
colony. There is still possible to do art.
Exactly. It sounds quite
There's
similar,
more
actually.
cultural vibrance.
Yeah.
Uh, I
Maybe
must.
it'd be nice to bring the students there because I took them to St. Ives the last few years and we visited the galleries and there's a branch of Tate there which signifies its importance in the British art world as well. Maybe Knock Heist would be a good place to come.
Yes, that could be. That could be. We're best in the season, not
We
in
can
the
talk
off
about
season.
that. We could talk about that later. Louis,
Yeah,
I know that
yeah.
you have been involved in architecture in the past. So do you have a favorite building in the world? And
Oh, that's a difficult question too. But I have a favorite artist like Tadao Ando, and Tadao Ando is more philosophical than more engineering wise. Zaha Hadid is very interesting too, but Norman Foster's too. But a favorite building of Calatrava is interesting too. Oh, that's very difficult. As well. It's so difficult question.
I mean,
Favorite building.
maybe somewhere that you walk in and unlike other places, you always sends a shiver down your spine or when you see it from the outside or inside. I mean, for me, I'm thinking of buildings like the Pantheon in Rome where I still walk in and am immediately amazed by the engineering of ancient Rome, 2000 years ago. And it's beautiful as well in terms of the proportions. But I just wondered if there's something like that, if you had to choose, you would go for.
Well, and generally speaking, I really like cathedrals in
Mm.
general,
Yeah,
like because I really like how they are made and give a very divine feeling.
sure.
And yeah, here in Bruges we have the Lieve Vrouw Church,
Hmm.
and it's the largest cathedral built by bricks. So, from a labor point of view, it's a very impressive building.
Well, I
Um,
didn't know that either.
yeah, and it has the only left sculpture from Michelangelo
Hmm.
left, actually, which is here in Bruges too,
Sure, I know that.
which the Nazi took away, and they found it in a salt mine. There's a big
That's
history
right.
around that too. But that's a very from the beginning, from my childhood, I always was very inspired by this building. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've just been in, I haven't been into San Marco for decades in
Hmm.
Venice. And I thought, you know, because of the crowds, the tourists in San Marco, I usually try and get out of San Marco quite quickly when I'm there. But this time I thought I'm going to join the queue and go and do a deep dive into San Marco. And it was amazing, you know, doing it properly, looking carefully at the mosaics, looking at the Pal d'Oro, this incredible jeweled, you know, medieval
Yes,
piece.
and every shape is so thoughtful. Like I have a high like passion for old buildings
Sure.
because it shows history and shows the change and vibration. Even the the effect of air and pollution on the building is very nice. How the sculptures are affected and so on. It's very interesting for contemporary architecture. Uh, I love New York
Yes.
because you feel nothing if you're walking there. The buildings are like pillars through the sky to
Ooh.
the unlimited, and then I'm questioning like how is it possible that humans are possible to make these kind of
Yeah,
things. Uh,
absolutely.
Even
I love your
architecture,
poetic description of pillars in the sky. You know, it is like that, isn't it? It's
yeah, it's very impressive.
yeah, quite a few people on the podcast talk about New York, obviously. It's
Oh,
it's
really?
it's
Yeah.
very it's kind of quite unique, I would say, you know.
It's a very special city, but as well, the feeling in New York when you walk there, you feel it's like you walk in a cave. Um,
It's true.
it's so
Yes, when
fresh.
you're feeling claustrophobic, you just have to head north up Manhattan to Central Park just to get a little bit of open air space.
Yeah, yeah.
Or down to the ocean, of course. That's always lovely along there.
It's a special place, New York. I think what you see there, it reflects like what humanity accomplished and did in contrast with nature. Like it's such a huge contrast.
Yeah.
It's
And
an
of
interesting.
course, the incredible tragedy of 9/11 and that amazing site when you go there
Oh
now.
yeah, yes,
It's
the
got
site
its
is so
own.
impressive as a monument. It's one of the most beautiful. It's like a black void going to
Yeah,
the with the water,
it's
and then
strange,
the
isn't it?
base of the wall. It's a very good sculpture. Who made actually that
Well, it
monument?
was Daniel Libeskind did the
Daniel
main.
Libeskind, who, oh
Yeah.
yeah,
I
good
think it
architect.
was, I think he didn't he do the pool as well, or am I getting that? I think he did the whole lot, didn't he?
Yes, it's a great architect.
Yeah,
It actually the Jewish Museum in Berlin is very nice too, which each name is pointing out to each address in the city
yeah,
on the building. So I like this kind of architecture, let's say that way.
absolutely. And what about music?
Oh,
Don't say you're eclectic.
yeah, I am. I'm moody. I'm a moody person.
Yeah,
So
okay. No, I think
um,
eclecticism with music is okay.
yeah, like I listen to classical music
Sure.
most of the time to stay
Mm.
calm.
Hmm.
But sometimes if in the car, I like to listen to good electronic music too.
Sure,
But not too popular music, not like David Guetta or something like that,
sure.
because I get bored from this music. But um, yeah, and just good pop music and just good music from the 70s and the 80s and 90s. There are very good music that time. I never listened to the radio because I feel like the music was overconsumed and there is a pattern in how they make music, and this pattern get exploited
Sure.
and That's why I don't listen to the radio. But it's the same about commercial movies, honestly. I never watch movies anymore, the contemporary movies, because I fall asleep. I already predict what's going to happen from the beginning because there is a pattern.
Yeah,
Uh,
structure that sells. So let's repeat it with a different surface narrative.
yeah, so I feel like the cultural consumer um, get flattened through in this age, and I'm a bit worried about the generation after me, how
Mm.
cultural refined they will be if they keep being exposed to these
Sure.
standardized patterns. I think my generation is one of the last generation that experienced the transition between the digitalization and the physicalization.
Hmm.
So I'm born in the 90s, so I really experienced around 2000 the computer was coming up and everything. So I still know how to play with Lego, but
Yeah.
I don't know how people will play with Lego now.
I think you might be surprised, though. I think that with the Gen Z that we call that next generation, you know, like my son loves collecting early computers. He loves getting old books on railway line, and I think a lot of people are going but have gone back to that analog almost for sanity because they've grown up with it. So I think the analog to that generation is exotic and attractive in a way, like vintage clothing and all that, in a way that the digital is no longer exotic to them because they were brought up with it.
It's tiring. I
Yeah,
mean, it's too much.
yeah.
Um,
And
um,
this is the difficult one, art.
mm.
If you really could only take one artwork to a desert island, that you'd have to live with, and it would almost be there. Maybe you spoke about spirituality earlier, but is there any one work, allowing for the fact that a museum would kind of give it to you, which is impossible, but is there any one work that you would take if you could?
Good question. Well, I have it visually in mind. It's a sculpture by Brancusi. Let
Oh,
me. Yeah, the bird,
yeah,
bird in
lovely,
space.
lovely.
Because it's so archaic in the same time.
Yes,
It's
is it the marble? Because I think he did marble and
in the bronze one,
the bronze one. That's right. Yeah,
like during his futuristic period.
sure.
This piece is so timeless.
Yeah,
It could be 3,000 years old.
yeah. It's
And
simple as well, isn't it? I mean, when I go to the Biennale, the art that because you're bombarded. We're talking about being bombarded. The Biennale, you go through the Arsenale and you suddenly think, "Oh, what am I meant to look at now? I've
oh
been."
yeah, it's
But the
consumer art.
stuff that I really like is always very straightforward and simple.
Yeah, yeah, and
You know,
that defines high art between consumer art. I mean, if you see that piece that is just above the definition of art to me, this is uh, yeah, this is just very good art. I mean, there's no question about it. You don't even have to educate yourself to appreciate this. It is simple, it's straightforward, it's timeless. And nowadays, like in this world, like art is so consumed, like there's just a pattern and consumerism and hype. And that's what I experience in the commercial world as well. Things get hyped and people buy, and I'm aware of that. But it's how it goes right now.
we've already spoken a little bit about
Yeah,
your dissertation on cross collecting,
sure.
and the you named the gallery, which I think was in the new millennium certainly is at the probably pioneering that development. Because I mean, I may be wrong. The problem is that as we were saying before before we'd started recording that there isn't a book on cross collecting yet or cross display, and yet it's such a social phenomenon. There are a lot of references. People use the term. You decided to do a dissertation on it, Louis, but I remember the first time I was made aware of this was in the early millennium, probably 2003, when I first took MA Art Business to Maastricht to TFAF, and I saw this gallery at Vervoort, And I
Oh,
thought,
yeah.
I got all the students to come and look at this and say, what's unusual about this? And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the people would have been doing this before, but in a very big way, there were natural and cultural objects, the fossil on the mantelpiece, the contemporary Amsterdam abstract painter on the wall, the Georgian furniture, the books, the Egyptian antiquities, all beautifully lit in a kind of dark way. And I know that Axel sees himself perhaps more as a almost like a Gesamtkunstwerk, that
Yeah.
he's an interior designer decorator. So I think the idea is that you're not necessarily buying the individual works of art, you're buying the idea. So I don't know whether you could talk about the way you came across
I
that.
totally agree. To pick into the Axel award, I think no, I'm really convinced that he is one of the leading figures of this period.
Sure.
Well, the last 30, 40 years,
Mm,
in what he's doing as a cross collector. And as I was working for Paul de Grande, it's the same category,
sure.
age category. They were the Axel Vervoort was coming to Paul de Grande to buy the antiques, and Paul told me like, look, I'm just a marchand. I'm just selling. But Axel Voort was really coming to Paul de Grand, and as they were telling it in that time, like 30 years ago, with a book and having ideas, and he was refining his idea when he was seeing an object and he was seeing that in a space, and he was dreaming around in the storage from Paul de Grand. And that is very interesting what Axel Voort did. He was actually simplifying and redefining how to show and expose art and putting it in the right intuitive juxtaposition, especially in the beginning when he started to do that. Actually, that was based on my interview with Boris, his son, Boris Revort, and Boris said. There was the Beaux-Arts, the Antique de Beaux-Arts in Paris in the 80s, I think,
Mm,
and there Axel was not very well prepared on certain reasons, and he left the floor with concrete and everything rough and put everything on an intuitive basis. And intuition is based on what your intellect has been developed over the years and how quick you can handle that intellect in a certain position. And then he was positioning everything what defines his identity, which was actually the foundation how he's um, operating from today. And some people call him a decorator, but he's more than a decorator. He's he's a decorator. He's bringing antiquities into a modern position as well. He's as well creating intersections between contemporary artists and other artists from around the world, especially Good Thai movement and Gansekwa movement in Korea. So to me, he made actually um, collecting sexy again, let's say that way. And it's a huge success formula, I must admit. Like many people are copying him.
yeah.
Um,
You then saw a lot more of it, particularly from about 2000 and probably 2012 onwards at TFAF, you began to get other galleries. Interestingly, the one I'm thinking of is Robert and Voyner,
yeah,
which interestingly, arguably, it was actually stimulated by the legal fiscal issue about modern Italian art, where the law changed so that you wouldn't be able to export it out the country unless you sold it within the next 5 to 10 years. And so Robert and Voyner at TFAF, who are these amazing, I remember at first they were basically showing 18th century vedute,
correct. Yeah.
Cappelletto, Bellotto, Guardi. And then I went one year and I said to the students, we must go to Robert and Voyner. They've got this amazing like old masters and they're kind of commercial. They sell well because they're the same views that we want to bring back as souvenirs today, obviously, the Rialto Bridge, etc., San Marco. And then suddenly I saw through the back of his stand at TFAF, Buri, Fontana. And I sort of said Castellani, I said, what? what is going on? You know, it's a great idea, and it makes a, you know, and he said, oh, we decided that we, you know, our clients might begin to be interested. They're now collecting modern as well as old masters, and then when I dug a little bit deeper, I realized that, of course, this is also to do slightly cynically with what's happened recently in Italian law, where the amount of time after an artist dies, uh, you can export their works until, what is it now, 50 years. They'd reduce the time. And so
Yeah.
there was a lot of that going on. But and then of course at Frieze Masters in particular, the first gallery you see and you still do is Moretti and Hauser and Wirth, Moretti, old master dealers, juxtaposing their work with a Louis Bourgeois by Hauser and Wirth and so on. So yeah, you're quite right. It's kind of it's blossomed and is everywhere
I
now.
think it's a good way because it allows people to educate themselves to understand
True.
other directions in the art.
And
So
and I think that often the primary sign for these galleries when they talk to you, I'm thinking of another one, of a younger one, Art Ancient in London, who also show at these fairs. Um, their primary thing is aesthetics. They said it's synchronic. Any kind of object, it could be a fossil, it could be a dinosaur skeleton, it could be an antiquity. What their primary idea is something beautiful, which is weird because it's kind of taken us away from more recent art history where we're not we're trying to avoid the idea of beauty and aesthetics. It's almost taken us back to that Kantian thing, which has also become more popular in art history. That can an object just be in a vacuum and just be beautiful in its own right? That tends to be the way those dealers talk.
it's about balancing. I don't think you can go to extremes. It's a balance. From the moment you start to use the product purely decorative and detach it from the history from it, then I think it's going a bit too far
Yeah.
because then doesn't make any sense why you take the real objects. You can copy it and 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 become a decorator in
Oh,
that.
it's a very good point, actually. Yeah. I guess it's kind of a marketing point, you know. They obviously find that people like that idea of everything in here is beautiful, even if it's natural, ancient, more recent. Uh,
Yeah, I'm sure like in 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 the Middle East and so on, they don't care that much about. I don't want to generalize, but they care more about the aesthetical output. Oh, it's gold. Oh, like it's this material, and that's okay.
mhm.
But the history around it sometimes is not necessarily important. It's about just what the output is aesthetically. But yeah, but that's the society we are living right now in. Um, and
After you graduated, I think obviously people do all sorts of different things, but one of the highlights, it seems to me, was work you've already spoken, referred to Lempertz, the Kunsthaus Lempertz, so where you were working
yeah,
In Cologne between 2020 and 2022. What did you think of Cologne as a city to live and work in?
well, let me introduce the situation towards the auction house. So actually, after graduating, like everyone, you look for a job.
Yeah.
And I met the owner at Brava Art Fair, which is a great art fair as well. And it's like the mini TIFAF in Belgium, but it's very good. And I met him there, and then he started when you want to start, and I say, okay, after TIFAF, I say, okay, great. But then what happened? TIFAF get closed in the middle
Yeah,
of
we were there with our students that year. We had to
yes,
be
and I
around.
got COVID too,
Sure.
and and then yeah, what happened is yeah, like every company was like holding back contracts, so I lost my job
That's
opportunities.
so sad.
It was a very yeah very hard period,
Sure.
and I was not the only one. So everyone went through a certain time of period, but then the owner really liked me, and he came back to me in the summer, and in the summer I could immediately start.
Fantastic.
He was taking a huge gamble on me because the COVID was still going on, and
Mm.
he succeeded in contracting me. And but the deal was that I start in Cologne in Germany. So to reply on your question, how I experienced Cologne, well, I experienced Cologne in the COVID, so um, so pretty hard, but amazing art museums.
Did the
Like the,
museums open as they did in London briefly that first summer? Like June, the National Gallery was shown Artemisia Gentileschi, and apparently there were no non-British people came into the National Gallery
far
that.
as I remember, uh, as far as I remember, I had special access to because the Lampets was sponsor of from the museums and very close friend with the, so I had always special access as
You
well
could
to
just go into them privately.
yes, and the
Fantastic.
Ludwig Museum, the library had always access to research.
Hmm.
Uh, so
That's good.
but I really recommend to go there, like to Cologne, like the ancient art, the is it the Walburg Museum? I
Yes.
forgot.
No,
Very
we did used to go, and we that year when we were in Maastricht in March 2020 when COVID broke out notoriously, and they hadn't closed it. Do you remember the controversies about TFAF that they thought they should have closed it down earlier, and it was
yeah.
spreading to people? So we were then going to go, as we had several years before, to Cologne for a day and then fly back to London from Dusseldorf. But we decided we couldn't risk the students in that journey. So we quickly got Eurostar tickets and coached off to Brussels and got the Eurostar back immediately. So
Good
no, we did
decision.
used to go to Cologne. It was amazing. And I used to take students obviously around the ancient Roman museum, which is brilliant.
Yeah,
Uh, Everything there was amazing, including the Gerhard Richter south window in the cathedral in the dome.
yeah, it is an interesting place,
Mm.
and art historically, Ludwig was one of the most important collectors
Sure.
at his time for Europe. So it's an important museum to go through.
And of course the place where the first commercial art fair was Cologne.
Yes, founded by the father of David Swinner.
Yep, exactly. It's such an interesting history, but people are amazed. If you had this as a kind of pub trivia question, very few people would get it. What was the first? Kind of, remember that the Biennale obviously was a trade biennial to start with, but in terms of art fairs, I think most people agree Cologne was the first in the 50s, I think. Or was it
Probably
later? A bit later, maybe
60s, I think. Uh,
60s. Yeah. Well, you
and
can.
then shortly after, our Brussels came as well. Our Brussels is quite
Sure.
old. It's
Yeah.
it's 40 years old.
You
Wow,
mean,
sure.
is that the same as Brother? No, it isn't, is it? It's Art
Oh,
Brussels is the contemporary fair.
or Brafa is older, or
Mhm.
whatever.
Anyway,
One
these dates we can look them up. And then,
Um,
so
so
after
my time in Lampets,
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
So my time in Lampets, just to give an idea about working in auction house, this auction house is one of the oldest one family owned. I think it's now sixth generation.
Mhm.
And they are very specialized in contemporary art, but ranging as well to silverware, decorative art, Japanese art, and I get very close to a lot of experts and people who are very dedicated and academic in their field. Um, and working in Germany was not easy because I didn't master the language that well. But everyone was speaking perfectly English, and as well, there was a huge resource of a possibility to do research, books, and whatever. Uh, it was all round. Like I was not working into a bracket. Sometimes the owner asked me, "Oh, can you go to the expert of Emil Nolde to do expertise?" I say, "Okay, fine. Yeah, you have to drive 600 kilometers with an Emil Nolde in the back of your car, or go to Paris for the committee of Yves Klein and all these kind of things." So these are very nice experiences, and I think this kind of experience doesn't happen if you work for Sotheby's or Christie's. um yeah, you are really put into a bracket in this kind of companies because they are too big. They are just too big. They have other qualities that they can offer to work there, but to learn the purity of an auction house, Limpet is a good example to go for.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was my
So the
experience.
advice to any current students or recent alumni listening to this is don't don't feel that you've got to hit the big brand names in the art world, that it's very, very good to cut your teeth in a smaller auction house or gallery.
Yeah, yeah. Life is like climbing up the ladder, and you can learn lots more if your foundations are stronger by going back to the purity and the more wildest part of the art market, and then you go to this kind of auction houses, or in France, go to Drouot, go work for this kind of auction houses, learn how to see what is bad art and good art.
Mhm.
Uh, and in the prime market like Sotheby's and Christie's, you will be only exposed to the best of the best, which is great. But I feel you need to be prepared to handle the best in the world. You need to see the worst before you understand the best.
Well, on an educational level, I always say to the students, forget the evening. The evening sale's interesting, but concentrate on the day sales, say old masters or even contemporary, because you learn a lot more about the art market in those less well-known, less expensive, less
Yeah.
expensive works.
Or if you like silver, go to Pertobello Road and early 6 o'clock in the morning and have a look
Absolutely.
what the dealers are offering
Yeah.
and start to understand what they are doing.
Yes.
Um,
Because the structure's the same. They may be a small stand in Portobello Road, but what they're doing, the way they're marketing and displaying their knowledge transfer, the stories they tell is no different.
Yeah, I totally agree. And another thing, what I had really advise for as young students, and that's an advantage I always had from being involved in the Beaux-Arts in Bruges since my 6 years old. I was exposed to train myself with all the mediums that is are available, from etching, lithographs, from sculpting, from
So,
painting. So understanding a certain form of art by its matter, to understand the material, it gives you a huge advantage. I mean, if you look to an etch, for example, and if you did etching by yourself, you immediately can see what is a good and bad etch. And
interesting.
if you do then drawing lessons to learn the proportion of a human and composition and blah blah blah, then you understand what is a good painting or a bad painting, even by looking for it composition wise or proportion wise. So these are already two strengths you can learn just by practice before you start even from the art historical part of it.
Yeah, when we're in
So
St. Ives, you can elect at Tate, to their education department, you can elect to do a drawing session where they're not only showing you the St. Ives School modernists, Ben Nicholson, Barbara Hepworth, and to name a
yeah,
few. But they then get everyone drawing, and some of the students are terrified, but they're basically saying, now do a drawing of something that you like, and just draw it, just look at it, and it doesn't matter what it looks like, and then turn the paper 45 degrees and draw another object, and you end up with this amazing abstract design, and it's such fun. But I always say to students, one of the best things you can do, it doesn't matter if you can draw or not draw, it really doesn't matter. But if you draw things, as you say, you understand them a lot, because it makes you look at the forms and so on.
I
Uh,
totally agree.
yeah.
Everyone has eyes. It's about using your eyes. I remember in our school, there was a professor that told me, Louis, look, the problem with people in this society is they don't look anymore.
Mhm.
They're blind. And she told me, like, look to the nature, go in the nature, open your eyes, and let the light go into your eyes. Like, just stare to what you see.
Mhm.
And yeah, the feeling you get is totally different than just walking in a tree, no, a bank, no, whatever. It's how you absorb things, and that's how you absorb as well good art, and that's as well how you absorb uh, drawing or seeing things. It is Everyone is an artist to me. Everyone is able to do it, but it's a matter of confidence and absorbing and learn to look to things.
Sure.
On the end, the biggest enemy is yourself.
And of course, you was talking about digital exposure, that ticking off the objects, one of the things I will recommend to students when we go to Venice this year is this is huger than anything you've ever been exposed, in terms of numbers of artists. There's over 300 artists represented. There's thousands of works, and select. It's better to go into maybe one of the collateral or one of the pavilions or two or three of the pavilions and really look rather than just trying to tick off the whole lot.
Yeah, be selective.
And you might
Um,
miss something interesting, but you talk about that over a glass of wine with your friends who've been looking at other material in the evening. You share experiences. You don't want to all do the same experience.
exactly, exactly. That's a good recommendation. Um,
Anyway, I'm aware of the time passing, and we haven't really spoken about. So
yeah,
you just opened up very excitingly
2 weeks
Buysse,
ago,
Buysse Gallery, which is named
or
after yourself.
I think 3 weeks ago.
3 weeks
Yeah,
ago. So one of the things I was going to ask is maybe you could tell us your story about how you found this gallery space and what is it like? What kind of a space is it?
sure. Let me introduce first how I get to the point to
Sure.
do this. I
Mm.
mean, I think psychologically it's very important. Like, why are you doing this? Why you don't want to be an employee? Why, yeah, why do you start a gallery? So first of all, based on all my experience working auctions, like my latest job was being a sales director at a gallery, and there, without mentioning the name, at the gallery, I was exposed to three gallery spaces, and I was doing everything in the gallery, and then I was starting to question myself. Very important. Question yourself. What are you doing? I'm happy about what I'm doing and this and that. So I was happy what I was doing, but I was not happy uh, about the long term. So the bigger picture. So then I was thinking like, okay, everything what I'm doing here is good, but the problem is um, I can do it better on myself because when you work in an organization, you are limited by others people their choices and you are limited by other people their vision. So I wanted to do an experiment with myself to do it better on myself and to do it by myself by challenging myself. So then I quit my job the 4th of January as a director, and it's nice to be a director because on your business card it's nice. People are like, oh, especially in the art world, the title makes your position on the end. And certainly I decided to be nothing again. So blank paper again. So I quit my job and then I made my business plan in February. And then my idea was to open a space in Brussels, but then I was evaluating possibilities and advantages. So you start to make a SWOT analysis. You will learn that in your master's course. So yeah, you need to know your strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats in every situation where you are. So my bottom line vision was being in your own location where you are the strongest, and that's Knokke. Because 2 years ago I did a pop-up there. I know how it works.
Mm.
Um, I know the dynamics. And so yeah, I signed up the space, and I literally transformed the space in 11 days.
What was the
11,
space before?
a gallery, but
Oh,
I
it
changed.
was already a gallery. Yeah,
Yeah, but I changed all the walls
sure.
and I paint all the walls myself. It's a ritual. You need to see it as a ritual, you know. If you want to be a gallerist, paint your wall for the first time, then you understand how it is to have nice walls.
Interesting. And presumably listeners, we can give a link to the website and they might be able to look at some
Yeah, I'm
photographs.
very proud of my white walls, honestly.
I bet they're not really white.
Every time someone comes in my space, they touch my wall. I'm like, be careful, be careful.
Unless you want fingerprints of future great collectors and artists on your walls.
Yeah. So yes, opening a gallery, it's a big challenge. I mean, the biggest challenge is finding artists.
Sure.
Okay. So it all depends which situation you are. If you
Right.
have a huge collection behind you and have access to that collection, yes, you have all easy way to
Yeah.
put
You
things in your
just have a
gallery.
stock and you can take stuff out the stock and put it
But
on
that's not
tables.
my case. So My only case is that I have a good network with a lot of artists. So I took one of the first artists that I used to paint with 11 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and I said to him like, "Look, I'm opening my gallery.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in your art, which is true.
Mm-hmm.
Say, you know what? You get carte blanche from me. You get a solo show, start." And he said, "Okay, I do it." And he fully committed to that, and we have great results on the end. But that's a huge risk as well. But the advice from other galleries were giving to me was, no, 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 Louis, do a group show to start. And I say, no, I do a solo show. And they say, you're crazy. And I say, no, I'm not crazy. I say, I mean, I have only to focus on one artist, so it's more efficient. If I have to focus on a group of artists, I will lose too much time
Mm-hmm.
and discussions and arguments and etc. and etc. So it's inefficient.
Mm-hmm.
So in the time scale I wanted to bring something, it was for me more straightforward to do so. Um, it's more risky, but it's about believing in what you are doing.
It's fantastic. I mean, and yeah, I guess I guess the rationale that it's less risky to do a group show because with any, it's like a investment portfolio that our students do. You're trying to find, you're trying to select artists that you know, are more risky, plus classic ones who that are going to be okay for investment. And I guess when you do a group show, then that you're going to sell probably works by two of the artists, if not. But whereas if you do a solo show,
It's yes or
y-
no.
it's just yeah, yes or no. It's just that will that artist, you know. But by the same token, you need collectors. So how did you get people to come into? Is this again contacts? Did you send out, you know, come to the private view to people you knew?
Yeah. I didn't want to have crowded opening.
Sure.
I wanted to be controversial on everything. So I didn't serve alcohol, for example, in my opening, gave water to the people
Good for you.
because I just wanted people to be serious and I didn't well,
That's
I didn't
interesting.
want, I wanted to have a soft opening.
Mm.
And on the end I was serving alcohol. But honestly, you have better clients when you don't. The dynamic, the dynamic of the people is totally different if you serve alcohol and serve no.
I'm
But
sure some people just come in for the free drink, the free glass of bubbly.
exactly, exactly. But there is no prime recipe to do so. I recommend to experiment with it, but events are very important. But I wanted to have a soft opening. But and generally speaking, it was a huge success. I think I sold 5 pieces in 2 days. So, so,
Excellent.
so yeah, it is quite good.
Yes.
As Yeah, it's very good actually.
And what?
But it
Who was the artist?
Tom van Peenvelde. It's a bit Gerard Richter Age inspired artworks.
Sure. And
Very
we can put links obviously on the website
yes,
for listeners.
serene works, very intellectual
Mhm.
work.
Did you
Yeah,
write an introduction or did you get someone else
yes.
to,
I
mm?
wrote all the curatorial texts
Yeah,
and the gallery statements
sure,
about the artist I wrote myself too.
sure. And do
Um,
you have any plans to take on more staff eventually?
Yes, I have a next show, solo show with James Riley. It's a
Mm.
very famous artist from the 60s, YBA. He was
Mhm.
shown by Saatchi,
Oh,
early shows of
no,
Saatchi.
I was asking, do you plan to have
Yeah.
to employ more people
People.
than yourself?
Well, yeah. Well, good people is hard to find on the end.
Mm.
I would love to find good people.
Mm.
The idea, this is just a start.
Mm.
My idea is my dream, my ambition is to become a global player in what I'm
Mhm.
doing.
Mhm.
Um,
But I
I,
think
I
it's
have,
really, although it's very hard work for you, Louis, I would imagine that it's very rewarding, particularly now it's been quite successful, that first sale, and now you've got this really good artists from Saatchi YBAs that you're going to show.
yeah,
You know that you're kind of just being yourself, which is obviously I think it's come across in the podcast. You're someone that doesn't like bullshit. You want to do what you want to do. So follow your heart, and
yeah.
this is a
It's
way of doing
about
it.
yeah. I totally agree. It's about just this is my baby, I must say. And when you work, it's your soul. It's your soul. When you work for someone, you sell your soul. Okay, you choose to sell your soul, you get paid for it.
Sure.
And if your soul is a lot of work, they will pay you a lot. But on
Hmm.
the end, if the company goes bankrupt, or they don't like you or whatever, you don't have anything.
Sure.
And with this is mine,
Mm.
and this is my soul. This is my kid. This is my girlfriend, whatever it can be that relates to me,
Hmm.
uh, and that's why I choose to do that.
Mm.
Um, and I hope I can inspire people in the future to do so too,
Hmm.
or I can employ people to inspire too that need a certain framework.
Mm.
Um, why I didn't choose to found the gallery with two-person is the real reason is to the possibility to accelerate your vision.
Sure.
When you with two people, you have two brains, so
Sure.
you have already a limitation of 50% in your acceleration capabilities.
Sure.
Uh, so I decided to do it by myself and to suffer first and
Mm.
set a good framework so I can employ people in a good environment.
I mean, I think there are famous historical predecessors who have done this when they've been younger. I mean, I think you might remember Riflemaker. So Tot Taylor teamed up, but you see, the thing is, Tot had been an art collector all his life, and he was older than Virginia Dempster. That was my previous podcast guest. They co-founded Riflemaker in Soho and became one of the, Saatchi bought up Jamie Shovlin Works, the whole lot, the first show they opened. So obviously very successful. But I think there was a reason, I think that was a good pairing of this younger person that had actually come out of Sotheby's Institute, the MA Contemporary Art, and Tot, who'd been an art collector all his life. I think that worked okay. The dynamic seemed to work. Whereas I think
Yes,
for you, it makes real sense that you've decided just to do this on your own.
yeah, this is no golden recipe, huh? You
No,
can partner up with someone. There
yeah,
just need to be
it's just the way it
the
happened.
right time, the right person.
Hmm.
Uh, and every situation is different. There is no recipe. It's
Sure.
about feeling and how you feel and how you want to move on.
And
Uh,
when it's now, I don't know what the weather's like there, but
Now
it's
it's
been
good.
really, really bad, and it was quite bad in Venice last week. I think it has been all over Europe. But when the summer comes, presumably Knocker Haste fills up with people. Do they tend to come on foot? Do you just get passers-by, just random passers-by looking in the windows of your gallery? Do you think that will happen, and some of them
Yeah,
might become collectors?
every day.
Yeah.
Every day. That's why I choose a gallery on a corner to have more
Mm.
exposure to the outside. So it's you need to see it from a commercial point of view.
Sure.
I have 24 hours exhibition exposure.
Hmm.
24-hour exhibition. If you take a space in a big city to save money, almost in a cave or hidden door, or to
Mm.
save, there are so many cases of like that. The
Yes.
probability to have visibility is very low. Let's say 5-10%.
Until you become as well known as Axel Vervoort, who has quite a hidden space. I seem to remember in Antwerp when I hunted it
Yeah,
down. It's very beautiful, but it was kind of like not didn't have a street, a shop front or anything.
that's true. He even succeeded in creating like a whole community. This factory he changed
Sure.
the location. That's like a whole community. I think Jay-Z has an apartment there too.
That's
Jay-Z.
right. Yes, that's happened
Okay,
more
or Kanye
recently.
West, one of the two. I don't know, one of the two. But yeah, the really famous people are coming there, and he succeeded in making like a kind of community. That's really nice what he did. But that's about when you have a name. I don't have a name, so I need to choose for visibility. And where I'm right now, I'm the prime location, AAA location. Choose for a AAA location if we want to do something,
Mhm.
uh, and get exposure and grow from there.
Is
Uh,
it
th-
is it just geographically? Is it actually in view of the sea, or is it a little bit further back from the
yeah,
beach?
the sea is in front of me.
Right. Fantastic.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, because one of the gallerists we worked with in St. Ives was also had this beautiful. I remember saying to the staff when I went in there, you must have the most beautiful view across this harbour in St. Ives, the Atlantic. And unfortunately, it got flooded earlier this year, so she's
Oh,
had to move out. So these things can happen to galleries as well, these awful external risks that can happen. So, but presumably you're not likely to flood, I think, with
We
this.
have dikes.
You have,
We
but you also have like marshes and wetlands that are soaking up any floods and so on, you know.
we have artificial
Oh,
beaches.
artificial. Okay, yeah, yeah.
Actually, there is a sanding problem in the region, and during the whole winter, they are pumping up sand on the
Yes,
beach.
because are you under sea level where you are, or on sea level?
Geographically, that part actually not,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah,
um, um,
yeah. Because
the
it's actually on the sea, so
well, it's only that part of
yeah,
West Flanders. Actually, the rest of Flanders is almost below or
yeah,
below.
yeah. Like
And then how
just
more
like
you go to the
ourselves.
Netherlands, how more extreme it go.
Sure.
Uh, so actually,
Amazing. It sounds,
Netherlands.
I can't wait to come and visit you. I mean, it looks like a go-to location to me because it's my kind of place. Some of our students who want the more glamorous beaches, but I love this kind of stark wetlands land. I love looking at the marsh birds. Do you know I saw in Venice the other day, crossing the crossing the incredibly busy um, Grand Canal, Canale Grande. I was getting a traghetto, the little taxi gondola across from one side to the other as you do, and there was an egret. You know the bird, the egret is like a white ibis.
Yeah.
No,
Wow.
pretty. I was just
This
amazed.
rare.
I mean, you do see that you never used to see them in England, and you see them quite a lot now, but they're still relatively rare. But to see one on the Grand Canal, I took a
That's
photo of
rare.
it. I can send it to you.
That's lovely.
Yeah, and that was as moving as any work of art I saw in Venice.
So David, do you have some questions for the listener, for the students, from
Yeah, I mean, we
from an
probably need to
entrepreneurial
start
point of
wrapping up
view?
now because we're
Okay.
probably reaching the kind of hour and a quarter mark, which tend. But what I think one final question for you is
Sure.
because I think you've given a lot of advice. I think a lot of the students listening to this will be very inspired by your story. They may even reach out to you. But I think the final question is for someone young like you and my students is what do you think the future of the art world and its markets holds in store for younger galleries such as yours? I mean, you're someone who has aesthetic tastes developed as an artist and through your art history, and you know the history of modernism and of the YBAs and the artists you've just shown. I mean, is this physical, if you like, almost analog art? Is You're still going to stick with that, or are you tempted to go digital, or do you think these things will just mix in the next
Well,
10
there
to
are 2
15 years?
points.
Yeah.
First of all, to give direction, uh, to diversify yourself is having a vision.
Hmm.
If you don't have a vision, don't start with it. That's important. Create your own identity and be certain what you are doing.
Hmm.
Um, there is a lack of vision. People copying each other.
Sure.
So that makes it for you very difficult to diversify yourself. Secondly, to reply to your question, if I would diversify to digital art, for example, or something like that, um, you know, that's not my priority right now, because I stick to the plan, stick to the vision I'm bringing up, and it's as well from allocating resources. Right now, I'm doing things alone.
Hmm.
If I start to do, for example, paintings, sculptures, installation art, digital art, you need to be able to handle that.
Sure.
Uh, Operational. Just doing something is all about operations. You cannot be all around. I'm doing this, I'm doing this, and I'm doing this, and I'm doing that. You need to focus.
Yeah.
Very important. And that's with everything. I still remember when I was in Lampeds and the owner said to me, Louis, he always said to me, Louis, focus.
Hmm.
He always say focus. And
Hmm.
that sticks to my mind. And this is the biggest recommendation I can give to people. Focus,
And the hardest thing to do,
yes, and specialize yourself in one thing.
like you've just with your opening show with the solo artist.
Yeah, specialize in one direction. Don't
Hmm.
go to any directions because that's not going to work.
Yes.
Uh,
No,
Amazon started with books because he was focused on books.
mm,
Uh, Elon Musk was focused always on one thing. He has now
mm,
many companies, but this is
mm,
started with one thing.
Yeah.
And Apple, same, big companies. It's all about focus. Even Paul de Grand, the antique dealer, he told me, I focus on antiques and I don't care about all the other things.
Hmm.
This is my métier. This is where I'm good at. This is
Hmm.
why people come to me to buy art.
Mm.
And it's very simple, but nowadays people are, and I experience that facet too, huh? Being a student, being overexposed to possibilities. Oh, should I work in private banking? Oh, should I
Mm.
work in gallery, or should I work in auction house, or
Yeah,
this?
I still feel a little bit uncomfortable. I'm not going to name the galleries, but they're very famous old master galleries. And
Yeah,
I'm thinking of some based in London that were at TFAF, some very old historical ones. And they have started, you probably know who I'm thinking of. They've started kind of branching out, and they will always kind of put like a trendy contemporary or modern piece in the, and I'm thinking, well, but your expertise, which is why people buy from you, is in old masters. So why,
exactly. It's
I
not
can
good.
understand the fashion for doing this, and I think that also there's a market. They're trying to obviously bring in younger collectors to who will then look at old masters. I understand that, but
You
it
can
kind
do
of
that,
the
but you need to do
purity
it good.
goes. The
Yeah, you
purity
need to do
goes.
it
Mm,
good. I mean, um, making a transition, changing direction of identity is difficult.
sure.
So you do it good or bad.
Yeah,
Simple. Um,
absolutely.
Ribolan Buena did it good, for example, because
Yeah,
they have
they're showing a Belgian contemporary artist whose name's gone right out my mind. I took students there the other day, who's you might know who I mean, who's using Rubens and Bruegel as a starting point for his amazing like large scale oil paintings. And I just trying to, the name's gone because I've just been in Venice, so I've been bombarded with lots of Southern Hemisphere names that I can't remember or can't pronounce, because that's what this year's Biennale is all about.
interesting,
Yeah.
interesting. But yeah, in a nutshell, focus.
Yeah.
And I even want to have a big painting around my desk later, like at Russia style,
Yes.
with just focus on it.
It's great. I mean, this is something people listening to this, mindfulness is the big word these days, but and a lot of people, you've got to do it. You've got to, I find it very, very hard to focus in this world myself. And
Oh yeah.
I've come through an analog world, but what we mean by mindfulness is also true, I think, when it comes to your career, that it's much better to focus on one thing and do it well, and you'll get a lot more out spiritually yourself out of doing that as well. And I think if anyone listens to us, again, the students, I would aim to be like Louis and cut your teeth by working in galleries and auction houses. You learn an awful lot seeing all this material coming through, and there's knowledge transfer from the wiser people. But I think in the end, you want to do something on your own if you can.
Yes, but to come to that point, you need to suffer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, we
Yeah.
both know about that, Louis. That's
You-
another podcast.
Exactly. Suffering, 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 because then you get to know the best of yourself, and then you can move on. If you are always comfortable, and that's maybe an advantage I have. From the moment I feel comfortable, I get nervous.
I'm the same because you think everything's going so well, it can't
Yes,
last.
I love problems. Problems are there because they are the foundation for opportunities.
Absolutely. Yeah. Anyway, Louis, without more ado, I just wanted to thank Louis Buysse on behalf of all the listeners who'll be listening to this. I think this has been fascinating, and I'm tempted to give this a title like we talk about cross collecting. Is that that's something I know that both of us are really into. And unfortunately, you won't find books on this out there, but you can do searches and find little bits of information, or you could come into the Institute in Bedford Square, London, and ask to read Louis' dissertation, which is a good starting point for a study of cross collecting. So, anyway, thank you very much, Louis, for your time today.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.